If you did not think that things could get worse for Donald Trump, I need you to first stop thinking that, because they can and they are. And second, put a big ol' smile on your face, because we have yet another fracture in the MAGA coalition. It seems like Donald Trump's loudest supporters have now become his most fervent detractors, and they are deciding that they need to exit Congress to go on that crusade of criticism against Donald Trump. And the latest to join the fold, well, it is South Carolina's Nancy Mace, with a shocking report that is a huge bombshell for Donald Trump and Mike Johnson that we are going to get into. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, before we get into this bombshell report about Nancy Mace and a huge decision that is rocking MAGA, I first want to start with why she might be making it. And that's this report on Donald Trump's terrible polling from Rachel Maddow right here.
The new Gallup poll out today is terrible news for the president, just absolutely terrible. His approval rating right now is -24. The president is 24 points underwater in his approval rating. 36% of the country approves of him, 60% disapproves. Just absolutely stunning. Not even 1 year in. And on the issues, it's even worse. It's worse just because it's so relentlessly bad for him. No ray of light anywhere here. Do you approve of President Trump on the issue of crime? No, by a 9-point margin. Do you approve of President Trump on the issue of foreign affairs? No, by a 15-point margin. Do you approve of Trump on trade? No, by a 19-point margin. Do you approve of Trump on immigration, right? He really wants you to love him on the issue of immigration. No, the American people do not approve of his handling of immigration. And what's the margin? The margin is 25 points. The American people disapprove of his handling of immigration more than they approve of it, by 25 percentage points. Turns out all those propaganda videos of you being mean to immigrants aren't working.
Things have never looked bleaker in the GOP, not just because this is Donald Trump's lowest point in the history of his political career, which seems crazy to say considering he launched a violent insurrection against the American government, but this is the low point polling-wise for Donald Trump. And not just him, but the rest of his MAGA Republicans, who are now facing down a general election shellacking in the midterms, and so they have stopped thinking about the primary. They no longer crave Donald Trump's approval or are desperate to protect from a primary like they were before, because they know Donald Trump is scared to get involved in primaries he might lose, and also because he doesn't have the power over the party that he used to. And Donald Trump also isn't rewarding his loyalists like he used to, which is such an important point for the announcement that is weighing on Nancy Mace. But before we get into it, we need to take a look into the psyche of someone almost her twin, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and what AOC said about her, because it is the same phenomena with Nancy Mace right now.
Here's some tea for you. MTG, people are like, oh my God, she's saying all of these things. Like, what's gotten into her lately? Oh, like she's bucking against Trump. She's bucking against the administration. Marjorie Taylor Greene wanted to run for Senate in Georgia. She wanted to run for Senate earlier this year in the state of Georgia. She wanted to be the Republican nominee for Senate. So she was gearing up for that statewide race, and Trump told her no. Trump said no. And the White House and Trump land shut down Marjorie Taylor Greene's personal ambitions to run for Senate. And she has been on a revenge tour ever since.
Marjorie Taylor Greene and Nancy Mace display this cognitive dissonance that is so clear in MAGA, but especially in the MAGA women, when they are upset that the boys' club that is Congress does not support them in their quest for higher office, does not take them seriously, and instead of realizing that these conservative men, that these MAGA Republicans have always thought less of women and are working to uphold structural systems to keep them down, instead of realizing that that is what's happening and fighting to break down those barriers and to get rid of those systems, They say, oh, this is just about me. I need to have my life supported. I need to have my political career uplifted. It's about me. It's not about something broader. They completely miss the point. But in doing so, they lash out. And it's what Nancy Mace is doing right now. Nancy Mace mulls early resignation over House GOP's treatment of women, report. Rep. Nancy Mace is considering resigning from her seat early, reported the New York Times on Wednesday, largely in frustration over how women have been treated under the leadership of House Speaker Mike Johnson. Representative Nancy Mace of South Carolina has told People she is so frustrated with the Louisiana Republican and sick of the way that he has run the House, particularly how women are treated there, that she is planning to huddle with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia next week to discuss her lead in retiring early from Congress, reported Annie Carney. Greene, a firebrand lawmaker who spent years in the good graces with GOP leadership, announced her resignation last month, effective January, expressing frustration with the entire direction of the MAGA movement. Mace, who is currently running for governor, has become known for her alienating many of her former allies with erratic behavior. However, the report said her fury with GOP leadership is not isolated, and it's only growing more and more by the day as Republicans descend further into intra-party sniping and Democrats rack up a series of overperformances in special elections. Less than a year out from midterm elections in which Republicans' vanishingly small majority is at stake, Mr. Johnson's grasp over his gavel appears weaker than ever, as members from all corners of his conference openly complain about his leadership. Some predict that he may not last as the speaker for the rest of his term, said the report. Republican women, in particular, have been publicly challenging Mr. Johnson and taking issue with his priorities and his style. Johnson himself only became Speaker as a result of a messy, weeks-long fight in 2023 triggered by the removal of former Speaker Kevin McCarthy by a renegade group of GOP lawmakers, including Mace herself. It is baffling to me that Nancy Mace can reflect on how much worse women are treated by GOP leadership in Congress and not realize that that is a broader systemic issue in the world and in the country that maybe a political movement like the Democratic Party could work and has worked to address. It is a level of cognitive dissonance that I cannot even understand, and it is the same level of cognitive dissonance that allows MAGA to say that they're tough on crime and they want to crack down on the elites and that they are going to release the Epstein files, but having stood in the way of it for so long. But now they can no longer do so, especially because I spoke to Robert Garcia about what the House Oversight Committee is going to be doing going forward and making sure that they are not only bringing justice to these survivors, but also, of course, causing huge problems for Mike Johnson. Congressman Robert Garcia, thank you so much for joining me. Today we saw the Oversight Committee release what was more than 150 plus images and videos that we have never seen before from Jeffrey Epstein's private island. I want to get into those contents, but first I want to start with kind of a broader question. We've seen the Oversight Committee release so many new files, emails, information, but Pam Bondi and Kash Patel seem to still be stalling. Do you think they will honor the December 19th deadline that they have to release all the information under their purview, or will there be more obstacles put in place?
I mean, I'll be surprised if they release all the files by the date. Certainly they should, and they don't even need any sort of date timeline. They can do it today, right? At the end of the day, they have the power to release those files right now. Yet they choose to continue to engage in this White House cover-up. We know that so much justice for the survivors could happen right now if they would just release the files, but they choose not to do so. And so, as you know, we've had a subpoena in place through the Oversight Committee for months for those files, and still nothing. We then pass a law that's bipartisan, and still nothing. So let's hope they do the right thing. But if their actions are really any preview of what's to come, then clearly they're going to continue to egg on this cover-up they've been doing.
Yeah, and I find it very interesting, the levels of the public participation in the cover-up. Of course, you have someone like Donald Trump who's been constantly calling the entire Epstein cover-up a hoax. You know, Pam Bondi says she's going to follow the law, but then there's someone like James Comer who in some ways presents himself as a good faith actor, but of course is not going to the lengths that he should to make sure that we're getting the release of as many files as possible, collection, subpoenas of new information, specifically when it comes to financial documents and financial institutions. There there are several banks that did business with Jeffrey Epstein, but it seems that Comer has only subpoenaed 2 of them. We're getting more information from JP Morgan, but what should James Comer, if he really cared about transparency, be doing when it comes to following the money?
If House Republicans were really interested in transparency and justice, then they would subpoena over 20 financial institutions, of which a list we've presented to them, that they know that the survivors have talked about and led us to. There are over 20 financial institutions we need to subpoena and get records from. The fact that they've moved forward on 2 is fine, and we support that. We've been calling for JP Morgan Chase and Deutsche Bank. We're glad we have that, but there's a lot more information out there that we need. And so that is true transparency, is going in that direction. In addition to that, there are other folks that we want to talk to, other people that should come in front of our committee that we can ask questions of. Why aren't we moving forward and pushing to get Ghislaine Maxwell in front of the committee? It seems like Comer has forgotten about that and really trying nothing to actually get her to come in. And so I think that Republicans have only acted when we have pushed them to do so.
Yeah, and I think that is such an important point to make, considering that Donald Trump largely wants us all to believe that the Epstein files have been released, right? He signed a bill, he made a Truth Social post, everyone can just move on. What is the role of you do you think someone just, who is watching this show right now maybe, and keeping the public pressure campaign up so that, the average American maybe not paying attention as much does not think that Donald Trump is fighting for transparency or delivered transparency, this promise that he made on the campaign trail?
I think people should continue to talk about it, post about it, talk about it on podcasts and shows on YouTube and in our digital spaces. And we've got to ensure that people understand the cover-up that's happening by Donald Trump and Pam Bondi, and that no, Donald Trump actually hasn't released really anything to the public. And why did he spend the entire campaign saying he wanted to release the files, and then now he's president, he's going back on that? I mean, it's really a betrayal to his base. It's a betrayal of his campaign promises. He can release these files right now and chooses not to do so. And we have to ask the question, why?
Yeah. We also have to ask what is not in the files already. A lot of information, documents, footage, videos, photos, everything that you have been able to obtain through the Oversight Committee. Obviously, that is part of the reason we are having this conversation today, because of all the footage and videos and photos that was released from Jeffrey Epstein's island. What was your first, kind of gut check feeling when you saw, I don't know if it was like a pseudo dentist's office with those masks all over the wall, just photos of what looked like a very, I think the only word for it is like sterile environment. How did you feel when you first saw these images that came out?
I mean, they're really disturbing. I mean, obviously that chair, which looks like some type of dentist chair, and then the masks that were on the wall, which clearly, could be worn and really creepy, I think. The phone with the numbers there to call people, the blackboard in the living room, images of the bedrooms. What's hard is what happened in these spaces. We know that young girls, sometimes 13 or 14 years old, were raped and abused in these rooms and on the island. And so that, I think, which is what's disturbing. But our commitment is, when we get documents or photos or videos, we're going to release them to the public. And it's up to the public to make assessments on what we release. And I think at the same time, we're going to protect the survivors. Of course, we're not going to put those names out there. But anything that we get, we're going to put out. And we wish Republicans would do the same.
Yeah, and we obviously saw some Republicans, and when we had last spoken before the vote in the House on the forced release of the Epstein files, you had made the prediction that you thought maybe more Republicans than other people were predicting would sign on. They'd be a part of the passage of this bill. Of course, that's because they felt the momentum that was behind making sure that we actually got transparency. I don't think it was really many of those Republicans had a moral moment, but could you take us behind the scenes of what you're hearing from your colleagues right now, as there's obviously talk of maybe more resignations from House Republicans? They're kind of just tired of dealing with Donald Trump all the time. I don't know if we'll continue to see Republicans be as involved with the release of the Epstein files, of course, as they were on that date. But what are you hearing still from Republicans and their feelings towards what Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are trying to do in terms of blocking the Epstein files?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's a mix. I mean, you certainly have some Republicans that are diehard, will do whatever Trump wants him to do and follow him till the end of the earth. But there's a growing group of Republicans that are concerned about the Epstein files, why the president has not called for their immediate release, that more and more break with the president, people that signed the discharge petition, for example. You've seen what's happened with Marjorie Taylor Greene and others. And so I think that we're going to continue to see, hopefully, Republicans take at least a more courageous stand on some issues. But at the same time, remember that these folks, they might be fighting for transparency on the Epstein files, but the day after they're cutting health programs, and they're cutting programs that help the poor and that provide housing and shelter for people. So I don't give them a pass just because they find their courage on one issue. But hopefully we can encourage that, and they can continue to break with Donald Trump.
Yep, and I wanted to finish on one more bit of transparency. Today, Spotify Wrapped came out. Who was your top artist? This is an important question that we're all clamoring for.
It's funny. I haven't looked, but I can guess, because it would probably be the same as last year, which is Beyonce.
Okay, and that is the correct answer. Actually, it did not matter who it actually was. That is the correct answer. I appreciate the time, though, Congressman. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, wanted to keep it short and sweet. I know you've had a long day.